The Galactic Health and Nutrition Symposium was a dazzling convergence of species from across the known galaxy. Held aboard the orbital station above Zorin 4, a planet famous for its sterile perfection and unwavering adherence to regulations, it was the ultimate venue for interspecies collaboration. Delegates shimmered, glowed, or radiated in their unique ways as they filled the central chamber, a massive dome adorned with shifting holographic banners, celebrating unity through knowledge. At the center of the room stood Dr. Claron Vask, Chief Health Advisor of the Sualan Consortium. His imposing figure towered over most, his bioluminescent scales glowing faintly green, a signal of calm authority. Though a subtle flicker betrayed his frustration, Claron was about to address the assembly on a subject that had been bothering the galactic scientific community for months: Earth spices. Delegates of the Galactic Health Symposium, Claron began, his voice calm but commanding. We gather here to discuss an escalating concern: the spread of volatile, dangerous substances from Earth. These so-called spices, wildly popular among humans, are incompatible with the biology of most species. They are, in a word, hazardous. He raised a glowing hand, and a hologram of a fiery red chili pepper appeared in the center of the chamber, rotating ominously. Gasps echoed as the delegates recoiled. This, Claron continued, gesturing to the projection, is called a chili pepper. Its primary component, capsaicin, triggers severe responses in non-Terran biology: neural overstimulation, cellular inflammation, and even temporary paralysis in extreme cases. And yet, humans ingest it with reckless abandon. Among the crowd, Jake Harlow, a human representative from the United Terran Alliance, leaned back in his chair, a wry smile creeping onto his face. Jake wasn't just a diplomat. He was a food enthusiast, self-proclaimed spice aficionado, and the kind of man who saw every challenge as an opportunity. Claron's hologram shifted to show a green herb labeled coriander. This unassuming plant has been linked to olfactory distress in Xerians and neurological agitation in Vorsing. Such substances must be regulated, if not banned outright. The murmurs among the crowd grew louder, voices filled with both concern and disbelief. Jake raised his hand, cutting through the noise. Permission to speak? Claron hesitated, but nodded. Granted. Jake rose, his confident swagger a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere. With respect, Dr. Claron, you're missing the point. These spices aren't dangerous, they're transformative. They've been part of Earth's culture for thousands of years, and we've thrived. In fact, I'd argue they've made us healthier, more resilient. Claron's scales flickered with irritation. Humans are evolutionary outliers. Your ability to tolerate these substances is not indicative of their safety for others. Fair enough, Jake said with a shrug. But have you ever actually tried them? The chamber fell silent, the question hung in the air like a challenge. Claron's scales shifted to a dim gold, an indication of restrained annoyance. I do not need to ingest poison to understand its effects. Jake chuckled. Poison? That's rich. Tell you what, let me cook for you, one meal. If I'm wrong, you can say, I told you so, and Earth spices will stay off the galactic menu. But if I'm right, well, you might just change your mind. The room erupted in murmurs again. Delegates exchanged uncertain glances, weighing the audacity of Jake's proposal. Claron's glow pulsed sharply, signaling a mixture of skepticism and indignation. Very well, Claron said, his voice laced with condescension. Prepare your demonstration. But I warn you, Terran, this will be conducted under strict scientific supervision. If harm befalls even one participant, your spices will be banned across the consortium. Jake flashed a grin. Deal! Jake wasted no time preparing for his culinary showdown. The station's sterile kitchen was unlike any he'd worked in before. Gleaming counters, advanced replicators, and equipment so alien it might as well have been magic. Beside him stood Nali, a wide-eyed Dravic intern assigned to assist him. Nali's soft fur rippled with anxiety as she handed Jake a container of replicated ingredients. "You're really gonna make them eat that?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jake opened the container, revealing chili powder, cumin, turmeric, and cinnamon. The rich aroma immediately filled the air. "Relax, Nali, they'll love it. Earth spices aren't just about heat, they're about flavor, depth, character. You'll see." "But why do humans enjoy pain in their food?" Nali asked, her fur bristling slightly. Jake laughed. "Yeah, it's not pain, it's a sensation. A little heat wakes you up, makes you feel alive, plus it releases endorphins. You'll understand when you try it." Nali tilted her head, clearly unconvinced. "If you say so." As Jake worked, the station staff buzzed around him, installing biomonitors and filtration systems to ensure the demonstration wouldn't accidentally poison anyone. Claron himself stopped by to inspect the setup, his critical gaze scanning every detail. "This is not a Terran cooking show," Claron said sharply. "Every aspect of this experiment will be documented and analyzed." Jake shot him a confident smile, looking forward to it. No, the day of the demonstration arrived. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered in the observation chamber, peering through reinforced windows at the sterile kitchen where Jake worked. Medics stood by, equipped with advanced scanners to monitor every participant. The air buzzed with tension and curiosity. Jake stood at the center of the kitchen, his tools laid out like a painter's palette. Claron observed from a raised platform, his scales glowing a steady green of calm authority. "What will you prepare?" Claron asked, his tone skeptical. Jake grinned. "Something simple, something everyone loves. Tacos." Claron's glow shifted to muted yellow, the alien equivalent of an eye roll. "Hey? Tacos." "You'll see," Jake said, already slicing vegetables. He started by roasting spices in a pan, the aroma rising like a symphony of warmth and complexity. Even through the sealed observation windows, the scent reached the delegates, eliciting murmurs of intrigue. Claron's glow flickered faintly, a subtle sign of curiosity he would never admit to. As Jake assembled the tacos, seasoned meat, fresh vegetables, and a dollop of spiced sauce, he glanced at the observation room. "All right, who's brave enough to take the first bite?" The room fell silent. Delegates exchanged nervous glances, reluctant to volunteer. Finally, Nali stepped forward, her fur rippling with a mix of fear and determination. "I'll try it," she said, her voice trembling. Jake handed her a taco, his expression calm but encouraging. "You won't regret it." Nali took a cautious bite, her eyes widened as the flavors hit her tongue. Warm, tangy, and just a hint of heat. Her fur rippled in delight, a Dravic sign of pure satisfaction. "This is amazing," she exclaimed. The room erupted in murmurs. Claron's glow dimmed as more delegates stepped forward, curiosity overtaking caution. One by one, they tried the tacos, their reactions ranging from astonishment to outright delight. Claron watched in silence, his scales flickering with conflicting emotions. Finally, he addressed the room. "This is far from conclusive. We must proceed with rigorous testing to determine the long-term effects." Jake smirked. "I wouldn't have it any other way." With the initial demonstration complete, the Council approved a series of controlled tests to evaluate Earth spices under scientific scrutiny. Delegates from various species volunteered to participate, each equipped with biomonitors and supervised by medical staff. Claron, as head of the proceedings, ensured every detail was meticulously documented, from the chemical composition of the spices to the physiological responses of the participants. Jake was given access to a sleek, sterile kitchen, more suited for laboratory experiments than culinary artistry. His station was surrounded by rows of observation windows where delegates, medics, and scientists watched with rapt attention. "Just to clarify," Jake said, unpacking his ingredients, "this isn't going to be one of those dry, lifeless tests, right? I cook, they eat, everyone enjoys. That's the deal." "This is not a recreational activity," Claron replied, his voice as sharp as the blade Jake was using to chop vegetables. "This is a scientific study, and your spices are under review. Proceed with care." Jake grinned. "Care is my middle name." For the first test, Jake prepared a mild dish, roasted vegetables seasoned with turmeric, garlic, and cumin. The aroma wafting from the kitchen was enough to draw several observers closer to the windows, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Nally, now an unofficial assistant, helped plate the dishes, while stealing glances at the colorful spices Jake used. "It smells inviting," she admitted. "It's supposed to," Jake said. "The nose is the first step in enjoying food. You eat with your senses before you even take a bite." The dishes were served to the participants. 3 volunteers of differing species, a gelatinous borson, a feathery ziri, and a chitinous vorsk. Each took a cautious bite while the medics monitored their reactions. The vorchin's gelatinous body rippled with a golden glow. "This is pleasant. Warmth spreads through my structure, but there is no distress." The ziri pluffed its iridescent feathers and emitted a musical trill. "Ha ha, the combination of flavors is intriguing. My taste receptors detect harmony and balance." The vorsk, typically stoic, chewed thoughtfully before nodding. "Stimulating. The spice adds depth without overpowering." Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Told you. Spices aren't dangerous. They're transformative." Claron, standing at his observation post, watched the data feeds carefully. Preliminary results indicate no adverse effects. However, this is only the first trial. It is far too early to draw conclusions. "Sure, Doc," Jake said with a wink. "But you've got to admit, it's a good start." For the second trial, Jake introduced a dish with a touch of heat. Roasted tubers, seasoned with black pepper and a small amount of chili powder. The participants approached the dish with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, their earlier positive experiences giving them just enough courage to proceed. The ziri was the first to react, letting out an excited trill. "There is a tingling sensation, but it is not unpleasant. It enhances the flavor rather than detracting from it." The vorchin shifted to a vibrant orange, its body undulating. "The heat radiates through my structure. Fascinating. It is as if the spice stimulates my energy pathways." The vorsk tilted its head. "A challenge, but not an unwelcome one. My circulatory rhythms have quickened slightly, but I feel invigorated." The medics confirmed that all readings were within safe parameters. The delegates observing from the gallery exchanged murmurs of approval, their initial skepticism beginning to wane. Claron, however, remained unimpressed. Increased circulatory activity and neural stimulation may appear harmless now, but these effects could lead to long-term complications. We must proceed with caution. Jake rolled his eyes. "If by caution you mean another delicious meal, I'm way ahead of you." By the time the third trial was underway, Jake decided to take a bolder step. He prepared a spiced stew featuring cayenne pepper, balanced with coconut milk and a hint of cinnamon to soften the heat. The aroma alone was enough to draw even more onlookers to the observation windows. Their curiosity outweighed their caution. As the participants sampled the dish, their reactions were immediate and varied. The Vorkin emitted a brilliant golden glow, its voice resonating with awe. "This heat, it invigorates me. I feel energized beyond my normal parameters." The Zirai's feathers fluffed out dramatically as it chirped. "Ah, exhilarating. The spice lingers, creating a cascade of sensations across my receptors." The Vorsk, ever composed, took a deliberate breath. "Potent, but not overwhelming. This dish challenges my limits without exceeding them." Claron's scales flickered with muted gold as he analyzed the data. While the participants appear unharmed, these reactions suggest a degree of overstimulation that cannot be ignored. This experiment is revealing patterns, but the long-term risks remain unclear. Jake clapped his hands together. "Or maybe what you're seeing is species discovering a new way to feel alive." As the trials concluded for the day, the results were compiled and presented to the council. While some delegates expressed cautious optimism, others, led by Claron, maintained their reservations. The debate over Earth's spices was far from settled, but one thing was certain: the galaxy's perception of human cuisine had begun to shift. Jake, packing up his station, felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Despite Claron's objections, the undeniable appeal of Earth's spices was starting to win hearts and stomachs across the stars. The experiment results had stirred a storm of debate among the council. Some delegates were excited about the possibilities Earth's spices presented, while others, led by Claron, remained staunchly opposed. Still, there was enough curiosity among the delegates to warrant one final test: a live demonstration in front of the entire council. The preparation chamber had been transformed into a theater. A long, transparent partition separated Jake and his kitchen from the delegates, who sat in ascending tiers. Advanced filtration systems ensured that no stray spice particles could reach the crowd. Medics stood by, monitoring both the participants and the chef. Jake adjusted his apron and surveyed the ingredients laid out before him. His strategy was clear: start with something familiar, then escalate. This was more than a cooking demonstration. It was a chance to prove the power of flavor to bring the galaxy together. Claron stood at the edge of the platform, his bioluminescent scales glowing a steady green of authority. "Let the record show that this is a controlled environment. Any adverse reactions will result in an immediate cessation of the demonstration. Proceed, Terran." Jake grinned. "Don't worry, Doc, I've got this." Jake began with a dish he called golden rice, a simple but aromatic recipe featuring turmeric, cinnamon, and cloves. As he worked, the aroma began to waft through the chamber, causing subtle reactions among the delegates. Feathers fluffed, antennae twitched, and even Claron's glow flickered faintly. Once the dish was plated, volunteers stepped forward from the observation chamber. Among them were the ever-curious Nally, the gelatinous Vorchin delegate, and a hulking Krelian, whose reptilian scales shimmered faintly in the light. The first bites were taken under the watchful eyes of medics. The Vorchin's colors shifted to a radiant gold. This combination of warmth and sweetness is delightful. It resonates harmoniously within my structure. The Krelian, who had been skeptical of spices, let out a deep, rumbling growl. The flavors are subtle yet powerful. They linger, invoking satisfaction. Even Nali, who had grown accustomed to earth spices, looked at Jake with wide eyes. It's as though the spices are singing together. This is incredible. Claron, observing the data streams from the participants' biomonitors, crossed his arms. Initial responses remained positive, But these results do not guarantee universal compatibility. This test must continue before conclusions can be drawn. Jake rolled his eyes. "Fine, Doc. Let's turn up the heat." For the next dish, Jake prepared a chili-infused stew, balancing the heat with creamy coconut milk and a hint of lime. The scent alone caused murmurs among the delegates. Some leaned closer to the partition, their curiosity overpowering their hesitation. The stew was served to the same volunteers. This time, the reactions were more pronounced. The vortine pulsed with a bright orange glow. The heat courses through my structure, energizing my pathways. It is an invigorating sensation. The Claron, who had been stoic, let out a low chuckle. "This is amusing. The heat challenged me, but I welcome it." Nally fanned herself with her hands but wore a wide smile. "It's intense, but it's so balanced. Every bite feels alive." The gallery erupted into murmurs of fascination, with some delegates whispering about the potential of introducing such flavors to their worlds. Claron, however, remained impassive, his glow steady and unreadable. "This level of stimulation may not be sustainable," Claron said, addressing the chamber. "While the participants appear unharmed, we must consider the long-term consequences of regular exposure to such substances." Jake gestured to the smiling volunteers. "Or maybe you should consider the long-term benefits of adding a little spice to life. They're not just fine, they're thriving." For the final dish, Jake prepared something bold. Spiced bread with cayenne and cinnamon, glazed with honey and a touch of citrus. The aroma was both sweet and fiery, enticing yet intimidating. When the plates were served, even some of the previously hesitant delegates leaned forward, visibly intrigued. The Vorchin emitted a golden glow as it took a bite, while the Krellian's scales rippled in subtle approval. "It is a crescendo of flavors," the Krellian said, his deep voice reverent. "Heat, sweetness, and brightness, together in perfect harmony." Nally, nearly bouncing in her seat, exclaimed, "It's like nothing I've ever had. Every flavor enhances the others." Claron's scales flickered faintly, betraying a moment of intrigue. He stepped forward, addressing Jake directly. "This has been a compelling demonstration, but it does not address the central issue. While individual responses may vary, the introduction of earth spices on a wider scale remains fraught with uncertainty." Jake leaned on the counter, meeting Claron's gaze. "You keep talking about uncertainty like it's a bad thing. But uncertainty is where discovery happens. You're seeing it right now. A room full of beings from across the galaxy, sharing something new and loving it. That's what food does. It connects us." For a long moment, Claron said nothing. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Finally, Claron's scales shifted to a muted gold. "Perhaps there is merit in further exploration. In further investigation, we examine further and further all the elements." The room erupted in applause, the delegates' enthusiasm carrying the moment. Jake smiled, knowing he had not only defended Earth's spices, but opened the galaxy to a whole new way of experiencing food. The applause settled, but the impact of the demonstration lingered. Delegates whispered excitedly among themselves, discussing the implications of introducing Earth spices to their worlds. Jake stood at his station, wiping his hands on a towel, watching the reactions unfold with satisfaction. Claron remained near the partition, his arms crossed, his scales emitting a dim golden glow that betrayed his thoughtful mood. After a long pause, he addressed the room. "While the results of this demonstration are compelling, I must reiterate that caution is essential. These experiments have shown short-term compatibility for certain species, but the long-term consequences remain unknown. Therefore, I propose the formation of an oversight committee to regulate the introduction of Earth spices to the galactic market." The murmurs in the room grew louder as delegates debated the suggestion. Jake, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward. "With all due respect, Doc," Jake said, his tone steady but firm, "oversight is one thing, but, don't wrap it in so much red tape that no one gets to experience this. You've seen it yourself. Spices aren't just safe. They're transformative. Food isn't just about survival, it's about living." Claron's scales flickered faintly, a signal of internal conflict. Perhaps, but reckless distribution could lead to unforeseen complications. The galaxy's ecosystem is delicate. You must understand that our hesitation is not without reason. Jake nodded. "I get it. But hesitation doesn't mean stagnation. Let's work together on this. A system that ensures safety while still letting species, experience the magic of what Earth has to offer." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered his words. Finally, a representative from the feathered Xeri species stood. "Dr. Claron," the delegate began, her voice melodic and calm, "you have long advocated for caution, and we respect that. But this demonstration has shown us that our understanding of Earth's spices may be incomplete. Perhaps, as Representative Harlow suggests, we can find a balance, an approach that combines your diligence with his vision." Other delegates nodded in agreement, their expressions a mix of curiosity and optimism. Claron's glow shifted to a soft green, signaling cautious approval. "Very well," Claron said. "I propose a trial period. Earth spices will be introduced in controlled environments across select planets, with ongoing studies to monitor their effects. If adverse outcomes arise, distribution will cease immediately." Jake grinned. "Fair enough, but I think you'll find that the only side effect is happiness." Over the following weeks, the groundwork was laid for the trial period. Delegates returned to their homeworlds, each carrying a small sample of Earth spices to introduce under carefully monitored conditions. Recipes were shared, cooking methods adapted, and medics stood ready to respond to any adverse reactions. On the orbital station, Jake remained to oversee the initial phase of the rollout. Nally, his ever-curious assistant, took on the role of liaison, eagerly documenting the responses from various species. One day, as Jake was packing up a shipment of spices for transport to a distant colony, Claron entered the kitchen. "Leaving already?" Claron asked, his tone neutral, but his scales glowing faintly gold. "Just sending out the good stuff," Jake replied, sealing the container of chili powder. "But yeah, my part here is pretty much done. The galaxy's got the recipes, now it's up to you all, to make it work." Claron hesitated, then stepped closer. "For what it's worth, your efforts here have been enlightening. While I still have my reservations, I cannot deny the enthusiasm you have inspired among the Council. It seems your spices have bridged more than just culinary gaps." Jake extended a hand. "Coming from you, Doc, that means a lot. Thanks for giving me a chance to prove it." Claron clasped Jake's hand briefly, a gesture that seemed almost ceremonial. "May your spices bring harmony, not chaos." Jake chuckled. "Harmony's the plan." As Jake boarded his ship to return to Earth, he looked back at the station one last time. The glow of its lights against the vast expanse of space seemed warmer somehow, as if the galaxy itself had started to open up to new possibilities. Sitting in the cockpit, Jake opened a small container of spice blend he had kept for himself. The aroma brought a smile to his face. "Here's to the little things," he said to no one in particular, setting the ship's coordinates for home. The stars stretched into streaks as the ship jumped into hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by the humble magic of Earth's spices.